Welcome to the Domination podcast, everybody. I'm Matt Hofeld along with Rich DeCray. Heartland-sports.com is the website. Heartland-sports.com. Hey, we've started using Facebook Live. Wave to Facebook Live. We've started using Facebook Live just to verify to people that we are not, in fact, broadcasting from our mother's basements. We're actually broadcasting from my kitchen table today. Thanks for your flexibility to fit into my schedule, Rich. Big game this weekend for the Oklahoma Sooners at Ohio State. Sooners roll 31-16. So much to talk about on this game, and we're going to get into as much as we can. But really, the sub-story of this game has become Baker Mayfield, post-game antics, if you want to use that word, antics, planting the flag. Theoretically, I mean, it's turf. You can't plant the flag on turf, but symbolically,
he sure did
planting the flag at Ohio Stadium. Before we get into his apology, good move or bad move on Baker Mayfield's part?
That's a difficult one for me to answer, and this is why I say that. I get that in a game of this level, with the hype surrounding it, emotions are going to run high. And so when you pull off what was considered an improbable win, that just knocks them that much further up into the stratosphere. And I think we were seeing Baker Mayfield act out of those emotions. You said let's not get to the apology, but I'm going to go ahead and jump there a little bit before you're ready.
Yeah, go ahead.
And that's because that's exactly what Baker Mayfield was talking about, was the emotions of that game. And he even went on, I don't want to say this was a justification of that action, but what he did say is it's something we're used to doing during OU Texas. And so it's not a one-off deal. It's not this was Ohio State, it was a revenge game, if you will. Oklahoma was embarrassed. What happened last year in Norman with having to hear Ohio sing Ohio, spell that out on the field. It was a little bit of retribution. I understand that. Was it something that I would have done? Maybe not. But again, I don't think anyone should be upset about it.
Well, and I'm really glad you brought up the Texas thing, because I hated to see Baker apologize in the press conference on Monday. I hated it because I thought, from a fan's perspective, that was one of the coolest things that, I mean, there's not a fan who was watching that live on TV, there's not a fan who was in the stadium who thought, gosh, Baker shouldn't have done that. That was terrible. This is all post-game media stuff by a media group, by the way, who had literally, to a man, picked the Buckeyes to win this game, so much so that Lee Corso called the Sooners pretenders going into the game. The media, to a man, was incorrect on their assessment of Oklahoma. So the drawback is, oh, well, Baker Mayfield planted the flag. I mean, is it a big deal when he does it in the Cotton Bowl?
No.
I mean,
you don't hear anyone complain, whether
never.
Texas does it or Oklahoma does it.
And you've been there, I've been there. The fans stay at the end of the OU Texas game to watch that happen. They whether they're Texas fans or Oklahoma fans, they stay to watch that take place. And you can make the argument, well, that's the Cotton Bowl. It's not in Norman. It's not in Austin. But I've seen teams, including Ohio State last year, I've seen teams gather at midfield and jump up and down on the logo, say, this is our house. If it's not a big deal to do that in a big game, like if you go to Lawrence, Kansas, you're not going to do that when you beat the Jayhawks. You're not even going to do it if you win in Fort Worth at TCU. But to do it in a game of this magnitude where they'd been called pretenders, no one had given them a chance, they'd written them off. People had been talking about J.T. Barrett deserving to be a higher voice in the Heisman conversation than Baker Mayfield. Did I spit on you?
No, you get a phone call.
You just looked at like maybe I'd spit.
Yeah,
but
I didn't know why my wrist
close,
was vibrating.
Yeah, we're close to each other, so I thought maybe. But I'm just saying, everything that went into that, to have Baker go and do that at the very end, to me, that capped a fun night. And I feel like the majority of Oklahoma fans feel the same way based off of social media. I didn't see a single tweet, Facebook message, comment that said, oh, he shouldn't have done that, from an Oklahoma fan. I mean, even Trevor Knight, who is as clean-cut, classy as you get, tweeted out, that's the most savage thing I've ever seen in my life. And so to come back 2 days later, and that was not, I guarantee you that was not Baker's idea to offer an apology.
No,
and that's
for sure.
where I have a problem. Go ahead. You want to add to
Yeah, when I look at the whole situation playing out with Oklahoma planting the flag, so to speak, at the 50-yard line, Ohio State, Baker Mayfield's not the only person involved in that. He's the perpetrator, yes, but when you look at it, there are 20 other players who are standing in a circle.
And not one of them is saying, don't do it, don't do it.
And I don't see an apology coming from them. So I'm giving validation to your argument, number one. Number two is that I had this question in my head because I know Florida State, when they ride out on their own territory, will throw the spear. Do they do that on the road?
I'm trying to remember.
Do they do it on the road, and do people get mad?
I don't even think. I'm trying to remember back to when Florida State visited OU. And I don't even. I'm sure Chief Osceola was there. But it was so insignificant. That was such a blowout win that I really don't remember.
So here's my take, though, and I'm going to leave it be at this. Ohio State fans are upset because they lost. They were looking for an outlet to take that anger out upon. Baker Mayfield, with his actions, provided that for them. And so here you have this Ohio State fan base who's now upset because they've lost. They found their target that they would like to place that on. That is Baker Mayfield. But the reality of the situation is, win the game when you're the favorite. And that doesn't happen.
But I don't know. Granted, Ohio State fans were upset, and they were upset with their team's loss. And that was just, like you're saying, that was a channel, an avenue for them to vent frustration. But the reality is, the backlash has come from the media. And it was immediate with Kirk Herbstreit, having to see that take place live from the booth. He went silent for a reason because he was upset with that. But again, you can't. I don't think that you can talk about Oklahoma in the sense that the media did as a consensus. I don't know if Mac Brown, even before the game, and unfortunately Mac Brown's a member of the media now, and
all I can do is roll my eyes.
I still can't stand his voice. But did you pay attention to what Mac Brown said before they went to the game?
Yeah, absolutely.
I played in the horseshoe. I can't. You can't win there. I've been there. Well, sorry, Mac. You also couldn't win Big 12 championships, and you could. But I'm just saying, all the stuff that happened leading up to this game, plus the revenge factor. Here's my take on it. Here's my biggest frustration with this. You're asking Baker Mayfield not to be Baker Mayfield. The only time we have ever seen Baker Mayfield apologetic was after his arrest. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And that was out of his character, out of his nature. He messed up. He crossed the line, and I believe that the Sooner Nation was owed an apology. And he manned up and he owned it. To have him go before the media and do that again because of the way he plays football and because of the chip he carries on his shoulder. And maybe it's too drastic for me, but I'm saying for me that's equivalent to saying, "Hey Baker, stay in the pocket. Don't leave the pocket if you feel flushed. Just step up and make a throw. Don't do what you do." And hyping this team up both pregame and postgame is what Baker does. And I just feel like it goes against the nature of who he is as Oklahoma's leader to ask him to apologize for that.
I saw, I think, one of the best memes, if you will, out there, and it has the picture from above of the scene playing out. Apology aside, the scene's playing out, and then off to the left is written out, and it says Oklahoma staking the plains since the early 1800s. Nothing's new here. And then Ohio State enters the equation. I thought it was a good meme, regardless of how you feel about it. The apology was issued, and you just have to move forward. There's nothing you can do there.
Well, the best thing to hit the internet this week was the Wikipedia page for Ohio Stadium.
Yes.
There's just nothing better as far as internet-wise. You can't. I mean, there's not a meme. There's not a tweet. There's nothing out there that's going to be better than that right there, where Baker Mayfield labeled as the owner of Ohio Stadium on the Wikipedia page. Let me ask you this. 31-16, this game's 3-3 at the half. Mm-hmm. Oklahoma's got 2 turnovers, both on fumbles. We were kind of talking about it at the time. At the half, you kind of felt like Oklahoma was just on the cusp of breaking free in this game. And then you look at I say 3 turnovers because you had the 2 fumbles and then you had the missed field goal because the snap was not right. So in my book, 3 turnovers, at least 9 points. I think this should have been at least a 12-3 game going into the half. But you have Ohio State just immediately take the opening drive of the second half, score. At that point, did you feel like they had blown their chance? I mean, how far out of the blue, if you will, did this offensive performance in the second half catch you? 28 points in the second half when they could muster 3 in the first.
The defensive performance?
Offensive performance. Oklahoma going off for 4 touchdowns.
It didn't, actually.
It didn't catch you off guard.
No. And here's why. Let me kind of explain why I'm going with that answer. And it's because when you look at the first half, Oklahoma didn't struggle to move the ball. I think we get carried away on looking at the scoreboard and where we are points-wise and saying the offense only put up 3 points, but the reality is they were moving and they were having success on the field. When you go back and you look at the time of possession, that's something that, off the charts. I don't know that you would expect that in a 3-3 game at the half. So Oklahoma absolutely controlled the time of possession, which means the offense was on the field quite a bit, which then gave that defense the breather that they've come to expect, I would say, during the second half. And so when I look at the explosion of 28 points in the second half, it wasn't unexpected. It was maybe not, wasn't thinking to myself up front, okay, they're going to get 28 here. But I thought the way they moved the ball in the first half, that they were going to have similar success in the second half. And if not, they should have more so, because that allowed them those times for adjustments in the locker room to come back out. Lincoln Riley having assessed the situation and saying, here's the weak points. These are the areas that we need to focus on. Maybe not today, but moving forward. But let's go ahead, stick with the game plan because it's working. We just need to find a way to finish.
Yeah, and I don't know that you can give enough kudos to Lincoln Riley for the offensive game plan. The way he called that game, I tweeted out from the Heartland account, it's the best offensive game plan we've seen from Oklahoma since Mike Leach unveiled the ninja formation, which you were probably like 3 years old when that happened. The role of head coach and offensive coordinator is still working very well for him, and it was one of the most creative game plans. The touchdown pass to help me out.
Dimitri Flowers.
Yes, thank you. The touchdown pass to Dimitri Flowers. That play was there all night long, and it was set up by the run.
Right.
And I love the direct snap play. Go ahead.
Talking about the direct snap, how impressed with you were with really the maturity level and what we were seeing. They call them grown men yards from this true freshman, because he wasn't breaking these extremely. His longest run was 13 yards, and he had 62 on the evening. I know you're talking about a stout defensive line, and I want to get to that here in a bit when we talk about Ohio State and the defense, right, as we're looking at Oklahoma's offense currently, because I think a lot of people are going to downplay their defensive front with the way that Oklahoma found success. But needless to say,
you're talking about Trey Sermon
how
right
impressed
now.
were you with him as an individual? And 2, do you expect that kind of a performance from a true freshman?
Let me answer your question with a question. Who's Oklahoma's feature back now?
Trey Sermon.
Is it?
In my opinion, it has to be.
Because we talked about this last week.
Has to be.
And we talked about Abdul Adams and the role he played in that opener. But they played all those running backs.
Right.
And I think you're going to see all those running backs again this weekend against Tulane. But
I don't know that I agree with you.
No, I absolutely feel that way, because you don't want to risk. I mean, you're going to see Kyler Murray play the second half. The Tulane game is going to be a rinse and repeat of UTEP.
I get that, but I'm saying when the starters roll out for the first half.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not expecting
I expect Trey Sermon.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be running back by committee overall in the game. And I feel, here's my question. And we saw this in the nature of Bob Stoops. And now I gotta kind of wonder if it's not in the nature of Kel Gundy more than it is Bob Stoops. If you're a running back, the number one rule is you don't put the ball on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And Abdul Adams disappeared after his fumble.
Matt, you and I had talked about this, and I'm going to remind you of what you said because Lincoln Riley verbatim said what you said when we had our conversation last week. And that is when you look at the running backs and when you look at the potential to fumble, or when they cough up the ball like Abdul Adams did, the running backs are going to touch the ball more than anyone except the quarterback. And that's a given. Yeah,
but the center can't really fumble.
He
can.
That's a given. And so they look at it from that standpoint of when you put the ball on the ground once, maybe it's time to look at another option. But I will say this, because Lincoln Riley was pretty adamant, and he was asked this question during that press conference, was the fumble.
You're talking about the Monday press conference.
Today, yeah. Was the reason Abdul Adams was pulled from the game that we didn't see him again, was it because of the fumble? And Lincoln Riley's response, whether you're buying into it or not at this point, Lincoln Riley said, we had a game plan, and our objective is to put the best player on the field at any given time. Doesn't matter how old they are, doesn't matter their experience, doesn't matter what their classification is. We want the best players on the field at any given moment. And he said that moment was Trey Sermon, but not to write off Abdul Adams. So Abdul Adams, I don't expect him to start against Tulane, but you'll still see him.
I think there's some coach speak going on there.
I agree.
But again, it is a evolving ranking of the depth chart for Oklahoma football, and you've got going into the UTEP game. Whoever I picked Abdul Adams as the starter.
Right.
Going into Ohio State, you kind of thought, based off what you said, when we talked about this, Abdul Adams, Trey Sermon, and Rodney Anderson are your three guys. But I think that order has flipped again, and I think Abdul Adams has dropped to number 3 in that order based off of a fumble. Now, that said, off of 2 weeks' worth of football, I don't think that there is a running back on this team with more upside than Trey Sermon. I think Trey Sermon is a star in the making. He doesn't have the shiftiness of Abdul Adams or that explosiveness of Abdul Adams, but he has the power and the nimbleness needed to be a star in this level. And he's got the best. I don't think there's a question anymore who the best offensive line in the nation is. Wait, I'm holding my microphone. Is that what you're looking at? Quit distracting me, Rich.
That's twice.
But I don't. I mean, after, and we'll talk about Ohio State and the response. But I don't think there's a question in the nation who the best offensive line is. And if I'm Lincoln Riley, I'm looking at what I've gotten out of Trey Sermon in 2 weeks. He was the most impressive running back of the committee against UTEP. He was by far the most impressive running back at Ohio State. He's your guy, and you've got this offensive line. Orlando Brown's gone. I mean, after this season, you're not getting him back for a senior year. Mm-hmm. And so this offensive line is not going to be the same next year. I'm getting this kid as much confidence and as much experience behind the best offensive line in the country as I possibly can. I think it's going to be running back by committee against Tulane Saturday night. But I think the next week, was it Baylor the week after?
It is.
I mean, even in Baylor, you might see it. But when they get to the heart of Big 12 play, this is going to be Trey Sermon's team. That's just my opinion. I think Rodney Anderson plays a good role, and I don't think we've seen the last of Abdul Adams. But again, the cardinal rule is you don't fumble the football. And when you fumble the football, I think it's Kel Gundy. I think that's his influence. I'm going to put a lot of trust in you. I don't care how old you are. I'm going to put a lot of trust in you. You betray my trust, and it's next man up. And I think that's what was the case. And Trey Sermon next man up, and he lit it up. You know what I'm saying?
So I don't disagree with you. And Oklahoma's Oklahoma is a place where you come, and you and I, again, are rehashing an argument, I feel like, at this point. But it's a place where you come and you don't have just one guy. And I don't know that it's that way anywhere in the nation anymore. You don't just have one running back. I will say this about the offensive line. You brought up Orlando Brown. A lot of people like to talk about the personal fouls that he had in the game against Ohio State last year. They want to talk about the false starts that he had. This was the same defensive line from a year ago, just more experience for Ohio State. Depth-wise, probably the deepest unit in the nation. And so I just wanted to take a quick moment and say that there are 3 guys easily on that defensive line who are taken in the draft next year within the first 2 rounds, I would say. And so a lot of people are going to downplay that, but I think you need to flip that script or that mindset. And instead of saying that Ohio State's defensive line isn't as good as we thought, it's more so that Oklahoma's offensive line really is as good as people expected them to be.
Absolutely. And one of my biggest frustrations in sports is the changing of the narrative. Going into that game, everyone talked about, well, Oklahoma arguably has the best offensive line in the country, and Ohio State definitely has the best defensive line in the country. That was the narrative. Arguably the best for Oklahoma, definitely the best for Ohio State. Oklahoma didn't just win the line of scrimmage. They dominated the line of scrimmage. I can think of one play in third quarter, maybe fourth quarter, but there's one play. Oklahoma has the ball near their own goal line, and Eric Green just got blown up. You know, I can think of one play really that the Ohio State defensive line affected an Oklahoma play. Now I'm sure there was others. I remember there was a batted ball early in the game.
Yeah, there were 2 of those.
But for the most part, Oklahoma's offensive line took Ohio State's defensive line behind the woodshed. And you can sugarcoat that by saying it was schematics, it was this, it was that. Bottom line is, Ohio State's defensive line was not the factor in this game that everyone thought it should be. And you have to give credit where credit's due. That goes directly towards Oklahoma's offensive line. But what drives me nuts is this narrative that changes. Again, national media perception is this is Ohio State's the best team. Then the reason they're the best team is because they can win the battle in the trenches. And then Oklahoma goes in and basically, and by the way, Ohio State should not have had 16 points because that was absolutely an interception on that last. Go ahead.
It was, and Rincon Riley. He jumped up in the podium and said, "You know what?" He talked specifically about Parnell Motley, the play of him really coming on not only in the spring but carrying that into camp, and now we're seeing that as the product on the field. And I know a lot of people talked about, yourself included, the hit that depth chart took when they lost a guy like Jordan Parker. But Parnell Motley is playing with an extremely high level of confidence, and he's making things happen. I don't think we can complain with his performance, but Lincoln Riley had said, his words, I was just too stupid to throw to challenge that call.
Timeout, right.
And he said, had I done that, it would have been 2 interceptions for him.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that didn't get buzzed down without the need of a timeout just blows my mind. When you had the Ohio State reception that was buzzed down from up top, no one had to call a timeout. Jeff Bedette's reception was called down from the top. Parnell Motley's interception was every bit the same caliber of play that those two were. It should have been buzzed down.
It should have been.
But the fact that it wasn't, just and it's a Big 12 crew, so it didn't make any difference in the game. But the point is, I agree with Baker. Baker said we should have beat him by more. Well, you should at least beat him by 3 more on that instance, because there's no way that was a gifted field goal right there. But the flipped script is that, well, Ohio State's just not as good as we thought they were. Does it kill you to say Oklahoma's a better team?
It does, because it would acknowledge that the Big 12 actually has a shot at the playoff. And not just the playoff. Outside of Sports Illustrated, the Big 12 now has a chance at a national championship. And that's what people don't want to admit.
And here's what people aren't talking. This is what just drives me nuts. I get it. The Big 12 has 10 teams, and they're doing a round-robin schedule and a conference championship game, which is just stupid. I get that. It's the dumbest thing. Big 12 has the dumbest thing in college football right now, outside of the interpretations of the targeting rule. The targeting rule is by far the dumbest thing. But the Big 12, I mean, I get that. But the opening weekend, Texas loses to Maryland. We talked about this. I ranted on this. No one should have expected anything different than that. Baylor loses to Liberty. I get that. Baylor lost to Texas San Antonio again this weekend, and 0-3 is coming this coming weekend. I get that. But why are we talking about how good Oklahoma was to go on the road and win at Ohio State? Why are we not talking? Why do we have to say, well, Ohio State's just not as good as we thought they were? Well, excuse me. Why are we not talking about TCU going and winning at Arkansas? Why are we not talking about? I mean, why did Oklahoma State drop out of the top 10 after beating Tulsa and then jump back 2 spots to number 9? After beating South Alabama. South Alabama's not even better than Tulsa. Well, the national perception of the Big 12 is unmerited. Yeah, there's some bad teams in the Big 12, but there's bad teams all across the SEC. There's bad teams Iowa had to go into overtime to beat Iowa State. Washington State had to go into triple overtime to beat Boise on their home field. Pac-12, look, I mean, you could go across the board. You could talk about the bottom of the barrel. I mean, look at what Texas A&M is doing. Texas A&M almost blew it again for the second weekend in a row. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about Baylor losing to Liberty, embarrassing. And then we flip the script. Let me ask you this. Biggest Oklahoma over Ohio State, biggest win in program history since. Finish the statement.
Man, with all the fanfare that was surrounding the game, it being college game day, I would say it's probably the biggest one in, was it 4 years since Oklahoma beat Alabama?
Mm-hmm. I saw that a lot, and I think you're wrong. I think it's the biggest win in program history since Oklahoma beat Florida State in the Orange Bowl in the 2000 season.
Really?
I do, because follow me here. Oklahoma beating Alabama, surprising win, a good win. I don't want to downplay that at all. But that was at the end of the season. It didn't set anything up. It didn't put you in place for anything. That was to close the season. And it left Oklahoma fans thinking, how did we not finish better than what we did? You know what I'm saying? This game, I think it's, and someone's got to go and look at the stats. You're my stat guy. I think it's only the second time. I really feel like I remember this correctly. It's only the second time in program history that Oklahoma beat number 1 or number 2 in the nation in a true road game. Just go to Twitter and look at Mike Houck on Twitter, and he tweeted something out along those lines. But this sets everything up. You cannot ignore Oklahoma in the college playoff conversation anymore. You can't say Oklahoma is not qualified for the playoff because they're in the Big 12. Oklahoma just beat the trophy wife of the Big 10. Maybe beating someone's wife is not a good analogy there, but you know what I'm saying? I mean, the Big 10 is touted as that. Ohio State, people were saying Ohio State was going to run the table this year. I got news for you. They're not, because they just lost to Oklahoma.
I don't think they're even going to run the table in their conference.
The 2 teams that people were, really 3 teams that people were saying were going to run the table were Ohio State, Florida State, and I can't remember the third one. I know for sure Ohio State and Florida State were out there. Florida State dropped Alabama opening weekend. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's Alabama, not Florida State. But I'm just saying, going in, it was the playoff picture was already set. Ohio State, ACC champion, Florida State, Clemson, and then Alabama. And then whoever in that 4th spot. You can't go with that narrative anymore. This was a huge win for this program, and here's why I put it above the you got the tweet?
I do.
Go ahead and read it.
It says only second time in school history the Sooners beat a number 1 or number 2 AP team on road and non-conference play.
Okay, non-conference. All right, so I was remembering almost correctly, just non-conference.
Yeah, because I was thinking Nebraska.
Yeah.
Maybe a Texas team here and there, along with back when Missouri had that really good program as well. So,
but here's why I believe this is a better win than the Alabama game. When you consider venue, 105,000-ish in the stadium. You consider it's a new head coach. Lincoln Riley is a rookie head coach, and Urban Meyer is the second best coach in college football history. I mean, that was the narrative going in. And then you got the running back situation in Oklahoma with all new guys, the receiver situation, this NFL caliber defensive line. It was the same. I mean, going back to 2000, again, you're a baby. You don't remember these things. But going back to 2000, Oklahoma was undefeated. Florida State had lost to Miami that year. And the talk going into that game was how Oklahoma had no chance to beat Florida State. And it was on the road. I mean, it was a road game. It was in Miami. That was a Florida State crowd.
And that was also an unsung Oklahoma team.
Exactly the point I'm making. That's why this was a bigger win than Alabama, because no one saw it coming. Unless you're a Sooner member of the Sooner Nation, and even I was back and forth on it. I mean, on the podcast, I know. I mean, here you go, high five. I mean, on the podcast last week, I'm sorry, to say Alabama. I picked Ohio State. Mm-hmm. I picked them, but then Saturday I sent that text out to our writers at Heartland, said, guys, I'm going to Oklahoma now. So I flip flopped, but. I mean, no one outside of Oklahoma saw this happening. And it was the same thing with that Florida State national championship. And I think Oklahoma has now entrenched themselves. You can't deny them the conversation. Now, they could trip up. They could lose to Texas. They could lose in Stillwater. But they still have this feather in their cap. They will be in the conversation from this point on.
I do like one thing that came up during that press conference is this win cannot be the highlight of the season.
No, I agree.
And so focusing, I mean, you're mentioning some of these bigger games on the schedule that are definitely circled. And the fact that Oklahoma may have to play Oklahoma State twice, it's difficult to beat a team twice in a year. Mm-hmm. Especially when you're playing just a month apart.
Sorry, which is just stupid. The Big 12. The Big 12 is stupid.
100%.
We know the Big 12 listens to our podcast, and we want you to know that you're stupid.
Let me ask you one follow-up question to my this is going way back to that Trey Sermon question. But when we look at typical Bob Stoops coaching, I think a lot of people were at a place where they felt as though Bob Stoops would come in with the mentality of let's not lose this game. Mm-hmm. Watching that game Saturday night, I didn't have that mindset at all. It was a mindset watching Lincoln Riley go for it early on fourth down and saying this is a guy who's coming in and he's going to take necessary risks to put his team in a position to win the game and to put pressure on that home team. In a game you're not expected to win, you've got nothing to lose. So I liked that attitude. What was your take on that?
No, I loved it. To me, that was the look of confidence. We know who we are. We know what we've got. We know what we can do. So fourth down, I don't care. We're going for it because we know we're better. And maybe Ohio State wins that one down or wins or whatever. But at the end of the day, the tone was set. I mean, if you're this Ohio State defense and you see this offense lining up to go for it on fourth and down, you're thinking, wait a minute, we're the Ohio State defensive line. You don't do this against us. And so maybe they rise to the occasion, but as Oklahoma did it again, and then Oklahoma starts scoring, I mean, they forced the Buckeyes into submission. And it goes from Lincoln Riley at the top going, I have confidence in you guys, I believe in you guys, all the way down to the performance on the field. I mean, those guys, the dynamic of Baker Mayfield is he's got his players back. Anybody, whether you're offense or defense, you know that your quarterback is on your side. Now, he's going to challenge you. He's going to get you to rise to the occasion, but there's not going to be a bigger fan on that team than your quarterback. Whether you're an offensive lineman, a receiver, a running back, or a defensive player, your biggest fan is Baker Mayfield. No one's. I mean, why are these receivers playing so well? No one's heard of these guys. Well, they're playing so well because in August, Baker Mayfield was all over Twitter going, "You guys just wait and see. You keep dogging my receivers. We're about to show you what we can do." Those guys rose to the occasion because Baker Mayfield said, "I believe in you. I'm the best quarterback in the country, and I'm going to use you to win a national championship." That was his message to them. He believed in him when everyone else doubted. So I think Lincoln Riley does the same thing. That says two things. The number one, it says, I believe that my offense can get the first down. We can beat these guys. Or it says, the second, when you're done texting, I can just, let me pause.
Go ahead.
Well, the second, see, we're on Facebook Live. Everyone's seeing you text.
I don't care. There's business to be. There's business that needs to be done.
The second message it conveys is, even if we don't get it, my defense is better. This is not going to put the defense in a hole. I loved the call. I mean, I absolutely loved it because of the message it sends to the players, and the players will respond to that. One more thing on the offense, Mark Andrews. Apparently he's okay.
Apparently he is okay.
It looked bad. I mean, when you see him just writhing in pain over on the sideline. Right. Do you play Mark Andrews against Tulane? If you're the head coach, I'm giving you like $1 million raise right now, and I'm making you the head coach, but it's only for a day. Actually, it's only for like 15 seconds. Do you play Mark Andrews against Tulane?
I do play him, but in limited action. I'm going to give him 5 to 10 snaps just to get him game speed. I don't want to say game ready because I feel like Mark Andrews has been on this level for long enough that he doesn't need to, okay, well, let's get him used to the speed and make sure everything's good. No. Not any of that for Mark Andrews. I do expect to see him just in a limited action because you want to kind of reestablish him in the system and kind of get him back into the action. Because if he's going to tweak anything, it's going to be in those 5 to 10 plays.
Yeah, but see, I don't give him an opportunity to tweak anything. I'm saying, Mark, you got the day off.
No, I'm not. I'm not on board with that at all.
No, because look, I mean, if it's not a serious injury, so he can overcome it, great. Let him overcome it. Because the next week is Baylor. I mean, do you need Mark Andrews to beat Baylor? No. So let him rest. Let him have this guy is important. I know they just beat Ohio State without him, but he is important to this team. There is not a more lethal weapon in Oklahoma's passing attack than Mark Andrews. So let him rest. Let him get healed up. Bring him out against Baylor to get him up to speed, and then you have him for the rest of Big 12 play.
I'm going to jump ahead here, and I want you to tell me who your offensive player of the game was.
Are we done with Mark Andrews?
No, because I'm going to come back to him here in a second.
Baker Mayfield's my offensive player of the game. I don't think there's another option out there.
Really?
Yes, it's Baker.
At all?
No.
Option.
This game was on the shoulders of Baker Mayfield. I mean, you look at it. I don't know if it's just cramps or what in the first half. He's something's bothering him in the first half. 3 points. I'm going to count 3 turnovers because I think the missed field goal counts as a turnover. 3 points, 3 turnovers in the first half, and this guy comes out and lights up the scoreboard. 21 of Oklahoma's 28 second half points came off the shoulders and the arm of Baker Mayfield. And really, you can say that the final touchdown, Baker Mayfield set that up. And he used freshmen. Cal Katerra's a freshman. Trey Sermon's a freshman. You got new receivers out there. You got a freshman receiver. He was the go-to guy. This was all about Baker Mayfield. They're hands down. You cannot argue otherwise. You can say I'm going to give it to the offensive line as a whole. That's fine.
No. Not even close.
There's no other player that deserves this merit other than Baker Mayfield.
I will say there's an honorable mention then, because I thought Dimitri Flowers played one heck of a game.
Dimitri Flowers is going to have a great season. He's going to have a fantastic season.
You talk about a guy who's that versatile key to an up-tempo offense. I didn't know if Dimitri Flowers had that in him.
Right. After
the hype machine got rolling behind him, and everybody was on board with that train, saying, "Okay, here's the next Trey Millard." Mm-hmm. It didn't exactly come to fruition for him. So we see Dimitri Flowers work on blocking to get himself in a position where he can be on the field. Ohio State, you lose a guy like Mark Andrews. I felt like Dimitri Flowers stepped into that role seamlessly, And give Grant Calcaterra some credit as well.
Because he dropped it.
Well, he
dropped a pass that cost OU points.
He had a potential touchdown
but he's a
reception
freshman
that he dropped.
playing at Ohio State.
Number 2 is they went right back to him.
Right.
And he was
and
able.
Whose decision was that?
That was Baker Mayfield.
Okay.
But he also got the exact same throw. It was behind him, other side of the field. Ended up making that catch. So talk about a confidence booster in a big time environment like that. Not a violent one, just a big time environment.
No, I get what you're saying, and
I'm just saying he deserves an honorable mention.
I think he deserves a mention as saying he had a great game, and I think Trey Flowers is going to have a fantastic season. Dimitri Flowers, sorry. Okay. Well, Trey Flowers is a pretty good defender for Oklahoma State as well. But I think. You got to give credit to Lincoln Riley for finding out how to use Dimitri Flowers. And so I talked to J.D. Reynolds a while back.
Right.
And J.D. just said, hey, because this is a guy that J.D. Reynolds has worked personally with, training him and so forth. And J.D., I said, what do you say to this kid? I mean, he's all-world talent, but he's struggling to get on the field. And J.D. said, I've always told Dimitri Flowers, you block your way onto the field. If you can block, they have to use you.
Right.
We knew he was explosive. We knew he could run the ball. We knew he could catch the ball. We knew he was versatile. What we didn't know is that he could block. And I think that has been his biggest improvement, and that gets him on the field. But still, it is Baker Mayfield, hands down. There is no honorable mention.
It's Baker Mayfield.
I mean, I think you can say Baker Mayfield and then CeeDee Lamb, Dimitri Flowers. I started to do it again. The offensive line, Trey Sermon. They're all honorable mention if you're going to do that because they all get to be lumped in there together. Yes, they do.
Not in my book.
Okay, well, your book's different from mine. So, okay. Let me talk to you real fast about defense versus offense because I think every bit as impressive as Oklahoma's offensive line was, so was the defensive line. I mean, that was and I put that in our players to watch. Mm-hmm. That you got to watch because this was going to be the battle as well. Everyone talked about the main battle being Oklahoma's offense versus Ohio State's defense as far as the line goes. But I was like, what about Oklahoma's defensive line versus Ohio State's offensive line? And I think that as dominant as we're saying Oklahoma's offensive line was, you have to say the defensive line was the exact same thing. This running back for Ohio State, granted, it was Indiana, but I mean, people were already comparing him to one the greatest running backs, in Ohio State football history. They're talking about Maurice Clarett, his freshman year, compared to this guy after one game. And
that's pretty lofty expectations. I'm just saying
that was again. The script has changed. Oh, he's just a freshman now. I mean, and 31-16 later,
he's just a freshman. He had their only touchdown.
Well, right, and he's a talent.
He is.
But I'm just saying, Oklahoma's offensive line, defensive line, if there was a test, they pass it with flying colors.
I agree. And not just their defensive line, the defense as a whole. You talk about one of the biggest weaknesses of Ohio State, and it's going to be a storyline to watch for that program throughout the entirety of the remaining season, is what can they do to get a downfield threat against a defense that's looking to make them one-dimensional.
I disagree with this.
I don't.
No, because I think they have the downfield threat. They don't have a quarterback who can throw it.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Okay. I don't care how – you can have a Usain Bolt out there sprinting off into the distance, and if you can't get the ball to him, it's not going to matter.
Something has changed in JT Barrett's mechanics over the last 2 seasons. Something's changed with him.
I don't think so.
No, I mean, well, just think about last year. I mean, in the trip in Norman.
Go back 2 years, okay?
But he lit Oklahoma up in Norman last year.
On the ground?
No, he threw 4 touchdown passes.
JT Barrett?
Yes, don't you remember the one touchdown over Micaiah Quick?
Here's the thing.
Look up the stats.
I tried to forget
Look up the stats. How did you forget the catch? The guy had never caught a touchdown pass or only caught one or something like that going into the game. And that guy makes the catch around the back of Micaiah Quick. He's falling down, and he catches that ball on Micaiah Quick's back. JT Barrett was a decent passer going into last season, but something transpired over the course of last season into this season. He's lost his touch. I don't know what it is. But what do you got? Were you looking at the stats from last year?
Yeah, I mean, he does. You're right. He does have 4 touchdowns. He also only threw 150 yards. So,
but look at you got this box score there. How far are the touchdown passes? Read me the distance.
So you have a 4-yard pass. You have one that's 37, 21, and then 8.
He can't complete a 37 and a 21-yard pass now.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing: is those are 37-yard passes. Where were they completed at? 5 yards downfield?
No, I'm telling you about the one that was caught in the end zone.
So I'll give you one, but
I think the other one was as well.
The other one?
I'm just saying, JT Barrett is not the same quarterback. Something has changed in his mechanics. And by the way,
I'm on board with you.
You think he's always been bad?
Yeah, I do, and the reason I believe that is because you got to go back 2 years, okay?
Okay.
Why do you think Cardale Jones started over him?
Because he was hurt.
When he was healthy, what happened?
I mean, because
because Cardale Jones can make the pass.
Hey, we didn't come here to play school.
I know, right?
But now
Jones can make the pass that Barrett couldn't.
Cardale Jones wasn't a great quarterback either.
He wasn't, but he was better than Barrett.
They got lightning in a bottle with Cardale Jones to win the national championship, and you can't take your national championship quarterback and say you're going back to third string. Oklahoma did the very same thing. That's why Troy Aikman transferred to UCLA. Again, you really were not born when this happened. Troy Aikman, 1985. Troy Aikman's the starting quarterback for the Oklahoma Sooners. He blows his knee up against. Look up why I'm telling you this story. That's a story time with Uncle Matt. Google JT Barrett's career stats. I'm just curious about his completion percentage. But Troy Aikman blows his knee against Miami in the 1985 game. Jamel Holloway comes in and leads Oklahoma to a national championship. They went after Jamel Holloway took over as the starting quarterback. They didn't lose again. They beat Penn State in the Orange Bowl. And it was case closed. Troy Aikman was the starting quarterback, but you have a returning national championship quarterback. You're not going to go back to Troy Aikman. And you're not going to go back to JT Barrett after Cardale Jones just blew you through the playoffs in the national championship. It's that simple. What's his career passing stats? Completion percentage.
Completion percentage is 62.4%.
No, give me year by year.
So you have, as a freshman, 64.
Okay.
As a sophomore, 63. As a junior, 61. And through 2 games this season, 55.
I mean, I'm telling you, you're seeing it's actually a slighter digression than what I thought it was, but you're seeing that completion percentage go down. And I don't think it's receivers. I just think someone's messed up with his mechanics. All right, Heisman Trophy. I mentioned this earlier. I'm looking at our running clock here. We're at almost 47 minutes. Heisman Trophy. I think the case is closed for JT Barrett.
Oh yeah. They're going to lose to Penn State and then Michigan, so it's going to.
Who's your Heisman quarterback? Or your Heisman quarterback? It has to be a quarterback, right?
Yeah, it has to be a quarterback this year.
Who's your Heisman Trophy leader, front runner right now?
Undoubtedly, it's Baker Mayfield.
What?
Undoubtedly. Why do you say what?
I think Baker Mayfield's number 2.
Behind Josh Rosen?
No.
Whoa.
No, you were asking me. You know what? Time out. I know what you're about to say. For those of you watching on Facebook and those of you listening, you asked me how Josh Rosen became a front runner. And I explained to you.
No.
I explained to you why he was a front runner. I explained to you why. But I wasn't on board with it, especially after this last weekend.
Matt, you told me how could you – these were your words. How could you put anyone else there?
After the first week. I mean, no one did anything more dramatic and fantastic.
I don't care about dramatics, though.
Yes.
I want you to be a good quarterback day in and day out.
Sam Bradford won the Heisman Trophy because he was a good quarterback day in and day out, and he flipped at Oklahoma State. Dramatic.
That was his Heisman moment.
Yes. Well, Josh Rosen had his in week 1. I mean, all of a sudden, you're a college player, and everyone's tweeting and comparing you to Dan Marino.
It's chosen Rosen, man.
I mean, that's what
Heisman's
but that was week 1.
Give it to him now.
Week 2, it's changed. I think Baker's number 2. I think Baker's performance has solidified himself number 2. He could be number 1 next week if Louisville loses at Clemson.
No. I can't. Lamar Jackson.
Yes, he's
Lamar
number 1.
Jackson had an incredible performance.
6 touchdowns.
And they won by 12.
He doesn't play defense.
He's the only player on this roster,
which just solidifies the fact that he should be the leader on the Heisman.
Which solidifies the fact to me that their first loss, he's going to plummet.
I agree. If it's on his shoulders, but
it is on his shoulders.
No, the win was on his shoulders.
Name another playmaker from Louisville.
That's the point I'm making.
That's the point I'm making too.
He's the best player.
I get what you're saying.
Who should be number one in the nation right now, football-wise? AP poll, coaches poll. Who should be the top team in the country?
Alabama.
No.
Yeah, why?
No, Clemson.
Why?
They're the defending national champions.
I don't care.
You're king of the hill. So by the way, our Big 12 power rankings haven't come out yet.
No, they haven't.
But is there going to be a shift in your power rankings? I'm putting you on the spot right now. You'll have to wait and see. No, I want to know.
So I went on record saying last week if Oklahoma beats Ohio State, that definitely flips. Because undoubtedly, best performance in the Big 12. They would have solidified themselves in my mind. Any of those questions from the running back perspective, which are still there, I still have those questions. But I don't have questions concerning the defense. Caleb Kelly played at an extremely high level this go around. I didn't think that with you.
What has Clemson? Oh, see, you're the only one who had Oklahoma State.
And
even our Oklahoma State writer has Oklahoma because you're king of the hill till someone knocks you off.
And
no one's knocked off Oklahoma, and no one has knocked off Clemson.
I don't take that.
Lamar Jackson is king of the hill until someone knocks him off. I said this on radio with our Fox Radio on Tuesday mornings before week one. They were talking about JT Barrett. Why is JT Barrett not higher up on the Heisman race than what he is? Why is Baker Mayfield there? And I'm like, guys, if anybody has a right to be mad about Heisman Trophy talk, it's Lamar Jackson. He's the defending Heisman Trophy winner.
Which automatically disqualifies him.
No.
You really think they're going to hand it out to a player 2 years in a row again? Never will that happen.
Never. He is electric, man. And he has done nothing. Baker Mayfield's gaining momentum. Granted, he is gaining momentum.
You know what Lamar Jackson doesn't have? A 12-game winning streak in his back pocket.
That's fine. But there is not a more gifted athlete in college football right now than Lamar Jackson. And it shows up every time he takes the field. If he goes out and beats Clemson on Saturday night, I think you just hit him the Heisman right there. I really do.
So let's go back to you're mentioning Clemson. Why are they your number one? I said Alabama. Why did you say Clemson deserves to be there?
Defending national champions.
Okay.
What have they done since beating Alabama?
Well, they lost Deshaun Watson.
I've seen them play 2 games, and
their defense is incredible.
I'm just saying, what have they done on the field? I don't care about who's in the NFL now. What have they done on the field to make you believe that they don't deserve to be number one?
It's not what they.
You're about to disqualify yourself from a logical argument.
Let's visit this since we're on it, okay? Alabama consistently brings in.
I don't care.
Number one
Alabama lost. They lost to Clemson.
With Deshaun Watson
I don't
on the field.
care. And
in a rematch.
If Clemson loses to Louisville, I got no problem with Alabama being number one.
So Alabama undoubtedly will run the table. I don't have any questions about that. I don't even think Clemson has that. I think they have the potential.
Who's going to beat them in the ACC?
I told you, and that was a conditional statement. So today you asking me that question, I'll answer that with it's highly unlikely that they'll lose.
Even if Francois is healthy, what you saw at Florida State offense, they're not beating Clemson even with a healthy.
But
Francois.
I don't trust Clemson's offense. I
need to know this question. Have you watched Clemson play football this year?
I've seen highlights of
that. Okay, we're done. Watch Clemson
Alabama.
Louisville. Watch Clemson Louisville.
Have you watched Alabama?
Yes. I watched them play against Florida State.
No, that's it.
Yeah, they played nobody. They played Fresno.
And they won that one pretty convincingly. So we're going to have to agree to disagree because we're going to go back and forth.
I'm not giving any credit to a Fresno State win, just like I don't give Oklahoma any credit. I didn't come out and say Baker Mayfield deserved to be higher ranked. I didn't come out and say he's the best quarterback in the country until after they beat Ohio State. But Lamar Jackson is the best football player in the country. And again, Oklahoma fans can disagree with me. That's fine. I am an Oklahoma fan. But I can be realistic about this.
Come on, Matt. Come on.
You're king of the hill until someone knocks you off. Baker Mayfield, here's what he's got. Here's what Baker Mayfield has going for him. Baker Mayfield has the best win out of any quarterback in the country right now. He's got the best win. That's what he's got going for him. Lamar Jackson has a Heisman Trophy sitting on the shelf and the best stats, most impressive performances from any quarterback in the country right now. I think right now it's a two-man race, and with all due respect to our friends up north, Mason Rudolph's kind of on the outside looking in right now.
I think USC had a pretty impressive win over they're always way up there in the rankings, Stanford, according to the media.
I wonder if my doorbell just showed up on our podcast, but whatever. 2 interceptions at opening weekend. Now they've got a game against Texas coming up, and you're going to have the Texas hype. I think USC, first of all, doesn't deserve to be number 4. Do you agree with that?
I do.
Okay. So
it was just like Texas preseason rankings. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Okay. We got to move on, man. We got 5 minutes. Parnell Motley. Most impressive performance by a freshman this weekend, or Trey Sermon, or
Parnell Motley. Parnell Motley.
I'm with you.
You talked about he should have had 2 interceptions.
Should have 3.
Absolutely.
Should have 3.
He's not a freshman.
He dropped 1, but he caught 2. Oh, yeah, you're right.
So
newcomer. Sorry. Newcomer. Yes.
Yeah. New starters.
Yeah. We'll go with that.
Yeah, Parnell Motley, undoubtedly. You talk about the 2 interception performance. 1 robbed of him. Still, you can look back and say it should have been. It won't go down in the stat book officially for him, but he basically sealed the deal for Oklahoma for me.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the score was on his first one, but Oklahoma was up by about 10. Maybe it was 11 at that point. They had 23 points. I don't know what Ohio State had. And so I look at that and it's like, okay, that was a big-time move because it was the first play of that drive.
Yeah, right. The OU had just taken the lead, I think. And then he gets that pick. And it was a great play. Oklahoma number 2 in the AP poll. I kind of hinted around. I got issue with that if Clemson's behind Oklahoma. I'm just saying. I mean, and we talked about this Saturday night. We were watching the game together, and my son was here, and we're talking, where does OU? And I said, I think 3 because I don't think you leapfrog Clemson. But whatever. Oklahoma State, we mentioned it coming in at number 9. We have spent 0 time talking about Oklahoma State, but they played South Alabama on the road. And if you play South Alabama on the road, we don't need to talk about you, other than the fact they have a bigger test this week at Pitt, but Pitt is not any good.
And then they're playing TCU, so it's not getting any easier.
Well, I think 2 of their next 3 are on the road still, but. I think that game at Pitt, I thought it would be a good game. I don't think it is. I mean, we can go ahead and jump into the Big 12 rundown now. I don't think Oklahoma State struggles at Pitt, even with linebacker issues that they've got.
They're playing with a lot of confidence. You mentioned the linebacker issues. I'm glad you did, because without certain names on the field for them who are expected to play roles, the defense held their own. And I think that was can Oklahoma State stop the run? That was one of the biggest questions after watching them play Tulsa. And so, like I said, I just think they made a step in the right direction from week 1 to week 2.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it should go. It should be mentioned that South Alabama lost their starting quarterback on the opening drive, and when that happens, you just play to stop the run. I mean, but Oklahoma State was going to win that game handedly, even before that moment. Kansas at Ohio. By the way, I'm drinking. I'm showing a drink here. I'm not going to leave it in there long enough for anybody to see. If you can guess who that's from, I probably just showed you. That's not brought to you by Rich DeCray. You owe me a Coke, a Dr. Pepper, because Kansas how'd they do? Against Central Michigan.
They did excellent.
They lost.
Just like someone expected sitting at this table.
So Kansas on the road at Ohio, 1-2 this weekend on the season now?
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. I lost my faith in Kansas, man. Like I said, I was hopeful, and I thought after week 1, as I mentioned on numerous occasions now, I thought they had a capable passer on the field. It's just not. It's not going to come together for him. That's all I got to say.
Okay. I agree. Ohio wins this, especially playing at home. Delaware State, West Virginia, willing to talk about that. Iowa State at Akron becomes interesting all of a sudden. Iowa State is better offensively than I thought they would be going into the season, but Iowa's not a good offense. In my opinion, the Iowa State defense looks better than what it is based off, and that includes playing Iowa. I think I want to watch this Akron game because I think it could be entertaining.
Okay.
I
don't know much about either of these teams, so for me to talk about it's really going to be a shot in the dark. Always want to pull for a Big 12 team.
For sure, but I don't know that it happens. I think we're on the air defending the Big 12's honor after Oklahoma State beats Pitt and gets no publicity at all for it. You're going to have Baylor lose to Duke. You're going to have Ohio beat Kansas, and you're going to have Akron play Iowa State really close, and everyone's going to be talking about that. Baylor's 0-3.
Yeah. They are the new cellar dweller of the Big 12.
Can we give props to someone for calling that?
Yeah.
Okay.
You said that week 1.
SMU at TCU. I don't see how the Frogs don't. Very one of the least talked about wins over the weekend was TCU beating Arkansas, right?
Right. That was something we expected to be fairly close.
Right.
Not ourselves either, but we can lump you and I into the same category as those who were putting the odds on the game because that was a 3-point spread when it opened. And they had TCU winning that game.
Right.
But you talk about the matchup from last season. Not much has changed for TCU in terms of product on the field. Obviously, Gary Patterson's still calling the shots. So I expected a close game. You expected a close game. The odds makers expected a close game. And then TCU blew that thing wide open.
For sure. You said TCU was my bounce back team this year. And I've seen nothing in the first 2 weeks. And granted, they played Jackson State.
For Heisman.
No. But I just don't see how SMU hangs with them. The 3 big games that I'm really watching in the Big 12 outside of Oklahoma Tulane, which is not a big game, but
it's pay-per-view.
I'll be there at the stadium, so I don't.
Good. You paid to view.
Yeah,
You're
that's
good.
True. Okay, Kansas State at Vanderbilt. Just again going on the road at an SEC school. Here's what's going to happen. Again, Kansas State's going to get no credit for beating the SEC on the road,
and they're going to beat them handedly.
I don't know that they're going to beat them handedly.
I believe they will.
All right, well, we'll see.
When those Friday locks come in, be looking for that.
Okay, all right. Arizona State at Texas Tech. Texas Tech's played nobody. Mm-hmm. Then you go from playing nobody to playing somebody. Oklahoma had the same thing. You go from playing UTEP to Ohio State. Now, Arizona State is no Ohio State, but Arizona State has the guns to come in here and expose some things from Texas Tech that weren't exposed in the previous their other opener against Eastern Nobody Mississippi College for the Blind Deaf Girls.
Well, and Texas Tech's terrible.
Well, yeah.
You and I had talked about Cliff Kingsbury. I added an S to the end of his first name. I don't know why. Maybe because that's where they're headed, is a Cliff. In terms of the football season,
that's a stretch.
I just don't see any way he still keeps his job.
No,
this is going to be another big indicator of why he should be let go.
I think if there were odds for somebody to get fired, the two odds, the odds on favorites right now, Kevin Sumlin and Cliff Kingsbury. Mm-hmm. Okay, Texas at USC. Now, I would tell you this. It was San Jose State, but Texas was more impressive than I thought they would be against San Jose State. They
got a shutout.
Yeah, and that's hard. It's not easy to get a shutout.
It is. And
I'm curious. This team goes on the road now.
Uh-huh.
I don't think USC is number 4 in the country, but I think they're head and shoulders better than Texas. If Texas makes this a fight, what do we say about Texas next week?
Flip a coin as to how well they're going to do next week if they do well here.
I'm just saying we were pretty honest about Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Do we say Tom Herman suddenly is getting some momentum with these guys? Or do we say, it was a fluke, USC was overrated? Because I do think USC is overrated.
I do too, but I think they're a top 25 team this year.
Well, so was Texas, according to the
Is USC
polls.
a top 5 team?
No.
I don't know. Because I don't believe that Stanford deserved to be ranked where they were either. And so it's extremely difficult for me to place teams in the Pac-12.
But would you say Stanford's better than Texas?
Stanford's far better than Texas. Okay. They're always a big physical. Stanford is. They're always a big physical team. And so they bring that to the table for you to contend with and you to compete with. They're not the team of last year, which I think everybody wants them to be. Stanford, that is. And so when you look at USC, it's hard for me to gauge just how good they are. Sam Darnold has not put up the best of performances. I don't want to say he's played himself out of the Heisman conversation.
He's in the second tier, though.
But
he can be back.
For sure.
Just because of the name brand, you beat Texas, you can be back in that top tier.
And so with USC Texas, I'm expecting a blowout.
All
USC.
eyes this weekend are going to be on Lamar Jackson against Clemson.
Yeah.
But the second quarterback in the spotlight this weekend will be Sam Darnold.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime you have that spotlight, you have the opportunity.
Right. But if he throws 2 interceptions, I mean,
for sure, yeah,
he's gonna drop a little bit further.
All right, we got to go. Score prediction: Oklahoma, Tulane.
I think that's a very comfortable.
Don't look at my score.
Comfortable one. I didn't even see you had one written down. I was just looking at your paper. I think it's a very comfortable one. I think Oklahoma puts up 42, and I'll give Tulane 10.
I think this could have been a trap game if Baylor wasn't next week. You put Kansas State next week. You put Texas next week. You put Oklahoma State next week. TCU. Then I think there's the chance of this being a trap game. No trap here. I think Oklahoma rolls 52-7 is what I'm calling on this one. So, all right, he's Rich. I'm Matt. Heartland-sports.com. Follow us on Twitter at SportsHeartland. Heartland-sports.com. Every day this week we're going to have stuff coming up preview-wise. Oklahoma, Tulane, Oklahoma State, Pittsburgh. Also got the countdown to tip-off for the Oklahoma City Thunder going at the website. Thanks for listening, whether you're on Facebook Live. We see you, Ken. We see you, Colin. Thanks for listening, guys. Hopefully there's more than 2 of you out there, but whatever. However you find us, thank you, and have a great week, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.